Hello and welcome to the Hellraiser blog. Ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed today's blog, please hit the subscribe button. We love growing the Hellraiser Boxing YouTube family and we'd love to have you along for the ride with us. The fight I'm going to cover today, fight just been announced by Eddie Hearn in Matchroom. Anthony Joshua, Olympic Games gold medalist, against Jerrell Big Baby Miller. I've followed both throughout their careers, well, Joshua even from the amateurs. Jerrell Miller came to my attention quite early in his professional career because he came in with like baby crying and wearing a funny outfit. I remember just in the office one day seeing it, and also there's a lot of things in Jerrell Miller I think to like, albeit for me probably at a lower level than world title fights. He reminds me, Jerrell Miller, in a way to maybe like Tony Tubbs. Like a blown up version of Tony Tubbs. He moves his head pretty well. He likes to punch to the body. He throws clusters of punches, but one thing I think you've got to take into account is he's never boxed anywhere near this level. I mean, if you look at his record, Jerrell Miller, it reads like a who's who of past it cruiserweights, very flattering record heavyweights. I mean, a couple of fights that really stand out, I guess, I mean, you can see lots of them on YouTube because he has been sort of well publicised and he's been on TV quite a lot. But the fight against Adamek really stood out because if Adamek punched like Joshua, Adamek would have beaten him. Adamek hits him clean. It was just, I mean, it made me think in the heavyweight division now we need a super cruiserweight division, because I don't want to see there be a super heavyweight in the pros, because Ali, Marciano, Joe Louis, they all won the heavyweight title, and for me that should be the sort of glamour title in boxing, the one that, you know, we all aspire to as kids to fight for one day. Obviously, I mean, I'd be an absolutely tiny heavyweight, so certainly by today's standards. But if you watch Adamek against Miller, Adamek lands flush. He lines up the punches. You can see he's got the right ideas to beat Miller, and he lands flush, but he just doesn't punch anywhere near hard enough against a guy who hasn't been under 300 pounds for over a year now, Miller, meaning that he is a complete different breed of human being to the heavyweights of yesteryear. You know, I mean, he's absolutely built like a tank. I mean, he's not like maybe got the high muscle mass percentage wise, but he's just a big unit, and at the level he's been boxing, much easier for him to let flurries of punches. His tactic in most of his fights, because of the standard of the opponents, he's been able to employ these tactics. His tactic generally is to walk people down, and like I say, for example, in the fight with Gerald Washington or Adamek, they land flush, and that worries me because Adamek's really a cruiserweight who realised there's much more money being offered in the heavyweight division, so I'll move up. Not a guy who couldn't make the weight, not a guy who naturally is a heavyweight who was boiling down for years. No, he's a cruiserweight. He went up, I would imagine, because the money was so much bigger being offered to him at heavyweight, hence he moved up, and wasn't big enough to take on the big guys and the best guys in the division. We look at their weight. I mean, look, Joshua's 6'6", 208 centimetre reach. He'll come in significantly lighter than Jerrell Miller, even if Miller does drop some weight for this fight, which if I had anything to do with his training team, I'd certainly advise. I'm not saying that there's any tactic or any changes that can be made that will give Jerrell Miller a favourite's chance or even close to an even chance of winning the fight. But the best tactics for him surely has to be to speed up his feet. He's actually got quite fast feet moving forwards, Jerrell Miller. But like I say, at the standard at which he's been boxing, it was easy to walk, because if you're fighting people that haven't really got the skill set or the punching power to hold you back, to stop you walking them down, then of course it's easy to walk forwards and keep employing that. And he hasn't really had, for me, and this is a major weakness in Jerrell Miller, he hasn't had enough bridging fights between that very low level and world class. He hasn't sort of shown anything to me that suggests he's world class. And if he'd competed against guys that were world class, who were proper heavyweights, who were still near their live days, not saying at their peak, because that's a silly risk to take as well. In professional boxing, you know, you're there to make money, and you don't take risks unless you get paid for them, or you're going to get a position, and he now has a position. But Gerald Washington, to me, is a guy with a very flattering record. Adamek has, for a heavyweight, basically zero chance of toppling the big guys in the division because he's too small. I mean, you can see I mean, there's an argument that he might have won the first round against Jerrell Miller. He lands flush, not quite at will, but frequently and very accurately. Problem being that he doesn't punch hard enough, and Big Baby Miller walked through it. How does this influence the fight with Joshua? Well, Joshua is a top-class amateur. Yes, there are certain things that ring alarm bells that I always look for when I'm trying to assess a fight. And for example, a guy fighting away from home for the first time, going to America, to someone else's backyard, it's a risk. Regardless of the intentions of the people involved or what you might think, officials are influenced. They're going to go in a hall where there will be a lot of Americans, neutrals, that just want to turn up. I don't think that you're going to see like more Miller fans than Joshua, even if it is in America. I think you're going to see more Joshua fans, because Joshua now has a cult following in the UK. Miller does not have a cult following in the US, despite the many gimmicks and sort of publicity stunts that there's been to build him up. He talks very well, Jerrell Miller, I mean, that's for sure. But when you've got like that carrot being dangled in front of you of, you know, say this, act like this, behave how we want you to behave, and you're going to make like millions of dollars, of course you talk well. You make sure you do, because that's your one chance I mean, Jerrell Miller, if it wasn't for boxing, he's not going to be a millionaire anytime soon, I wouldn't have thought. In boxing, he absolutely has every chance of becoming a millionaire. And I think, you know, he is American. He has a perfect or near perfect record. He has a draw, but he's unbeaten. He's up there. He's got his opportunity. He's going to make good money, and I think he'll give it his all. My worry is he's going to run into something that he's absolutely never. He's not been sculpted. He's been sculpted to go up the ratings, fighting guys with winning records, unbeaten guys. We saw him against Bogdan Dinu. But if you watch the fight with Dinu, you know, Dinu lets him off the hook more than he punishes him. But Dinu is just nowhere near the level. So, and Dinu himself hasn't boxed at a high enough level for him to be a solid acid test where we could say, I can read the form now. This means there's so many question marks over Miller. I get very suspicious. I think, yeah, great that we get Joshua out in America. We see that fight. But I mean, if it wasn't for the fact that he'd signed with DAZN, I would not see Big Baby Miller. I think he fits the bill very well. He has a good rating, he has a good record, he's American, means that, you know, they're trying to push Joshua now obviously to the American market and get him out there. Do I see him causing an upset? I've got to say no, I don't. I think this will probably be a spectacular. Joshua, for me, he hasn't performed so well in his last 2-3 performances, I'd say. But he's been fighting like Povetkin, very tricky fighter. Carlos Takam, very tricky fighter. You know, when you're fighting that level of opponent, it's very difficult to look spectacular. It's not like his first 10 fights where he was just blitzing his way through the decision and he could make mistakes and still walk through them. It didn't matter. Now he's fighting a higher caliber, and even Miller is higher caliber than most of those guys that Joshua was blitzing through at the beginning. He boxed one of my guys, you know, knocked Rafael Zambano out, and this is a step up from that. If Miller can get inside, yes, he could cause some problems, but my prediction, Joshua by KO, I'd say around round 4. Thanks for watching, guys. Please hit the subscribe button. See you next week.